6 a.m.
Jesus stands trial before Pilate.
Matthew 27:11 to 14, Mark 15:2 through 5, Luke 23:1 through 5, John 18:28 through 37,
Jesus sent to Herod.
Luke 22:6 through 12. 7 a.m.
Jesus returned to Pilate.
Luke 23:11,
Jesus is sentenced to death.
Matthew 27:26, Mark 15:15, Luke 23:23 and 24, John 19:16. 8 a.m.
Jesus is led away to Calvary.
Matthew 27:32 through 34, Mark 15:21 through 24, Luke 23:26 through 31, John 19:16 and 17.
The third hour in Jewish time would have been 9 a.m.
9 a.m. The third hour.
Jesus is crucified.
Mark 15 through 25.
It was the third hour when they crucified him. Father, forgive them.
Luke 22:34.
The soldiers cast lots for Jesus' clothing.
Mark 15:24. 10 a.m.
Jesus is insulted and mocked. Matthew 27:39 through 40.
And the people passing by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. So, you can destroy the temple and build it again in 3 days, can you? And then, if you are the Son of God, save yourself and come down from this cross.
Mark 15:31.
The leading priest and the teacher of the religious law also mocked Jesus. He saved others, they scoffed, but he can't save himself.
Luke 23:36.
The soldiers mocked him too by offering him a drink of sour wine, and they called out to him, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself."
Luke 23:39.
One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us." 11 a.m.
Jesus and the criminal. Luke 23:40 through 43.
But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God?" he said. "Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly for what we are getting our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." And then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise."
Jesus speaks to Mary and John.
Noon, the 6th hour.
Darkness covers the land.
Mark 15:33. 1 p.m.
Jesus cries out to the Father. Matthew 27:46.
And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?"
Jesus is thirsty.
John 19:28 and 29. 2 p.m.
It is finished. John 19:30.
When Jesus has tasted it, he said, "It is finished."
Into your hands I commit my spirit. Luke 23:46.
Jesus called out with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." When he had said this, he breathed his last. It is Good Friday. Orthodox Christians and Byzantine Christians refer to Good Friday as Great Friday in order to recall the events that led to the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. There's different ideologies on the meaning behind the name Good Friday. Some say that it originates from the origin of God's Friday, like God's spell. Some say that it comes from the fact that good is referring to the pious goodness of God, and this day known as Good Friday is when it's sacrificed. What we agree on is sort of the order of things that happened. They talk about those as the trials of Jesus on Good Friday time, which is why it's a heavy time. First trial before Annas, when he is being accused, talking about the Sanhedrin of high priests. That's a numbered, sacred number of people that come together to sort of judge. And Jesus is condemned, is misused, is treated badly, hurt and mocked. After the first and the second trial, the third trial, Peter denies Jesus, as Jesus told him he would the night before. Jesus sort of looks up, and Peter again, denies. The condemnation is repeated. Jesus is taken to the Romans for the fourth trial, where Pilate then sends him to Herod, because Pilate's like, why don't you Jews take care of this stuff? Herod, in looking for the miracle, Herod now has the ability to condemn this man. Sends him back to Pilate. Jesus is scourged. Pilate's hoping that might work. The crowds shout, "Crucify him! Crucify him, Pontius Pilate, or we'll tell Rome." Jesus then is turned over to be crucified. Pilate washes his hands of the whole thing. The crowds more and more. When Pilate said Barabbas, or Jesus said, "Release the criminal, release Barabbas," Jesus then is going to be turned over to be crucified. And he is. He's mocked. Judas hangs himself. Jesus bears his cross to the gate north of the city, crucified at 9. There's not much bright in this story at all. This is what had to happen. It's what I would say within chapel title was where will becomes won't. There is a certain point, once those beacons are lit, where things fall like one of those Rube Goldberg machines in an inevitable way. The chips fall where they will. It's the only way that can happen. If the beacons were lit and we did or didn't respond, what is set into motion then is something. We're going to have a total eclipse soon. Here in Ottawa, Kansas, we won't see it, but we could drive out to western Kansas and see it. Will I? Well, if I don't go, I won't see that. I won't see it, except on TV. It's pretty close. I could probably drive 3 hours away and see it. But at this point, if I'm going to go, I best buy those glasses, and I don't have them. There's all sorts of issues as far as whether those glasses are the real ones or they're fraudulent, whether I will look at that eclipse and ruin my eyes because I don't know for sure that the glasses I purchased were safe or not replicas of the safe ones. Well, that seems complicated. And I have seen an eclipse. Maybe I don't need to see this eclipse. And I can go back and forth on this for some time until the inevitable happens, when the eclipse looms, because it does, blooms because it will be, and I don't have my glasses, and I haven't gotten in the car, and so I will be regulated to either not see it or to see a recording of it or to see it on the news or however that goes. There is an inevitability of those things, where if I don't take that action, or if I don't follow my destiny, fate will take over. You can say that with a ton of things. With all the things in our lives, good, bad, indifferent. There is a point where if we do not respond, right now the lotteries are huge. If we don't buy that ticket, and I'm not a huge lottery player, but you'll always wonder if maybe your late wife or God had some plan for you to win that lottery and do good with all that money. Now, it doesn't mean you buy 40 tickets, unless somehow you have 40 friends that want to. But it does mean that probably you should at least buy one, so that you can open that up, or at least not have regrets that say, maybe I should have bought a ticket when the guy across the street wins, and I do not. It doesn't mean I begrudge the guy across the street for winning. In fact, maybe he'll give me some money to do good in the world, or support the charities I do. But it does mean that I probably should buy the ticket, so I understand that when the beacons are lit, there's a limited time to respond. There are so many things in the world that are that way, good, bad, and indifferent. As we look back then on Good Friday, on Black Friday as it's called, on Great Friday as some call it, the beacons are lit and now the response comes. And that response is horrible and terrible and leads to what will be miraculous. Oh, but what a painful process. And we, the sins of the father, are culpable. There is blood on our hands. Pilate says, what does truth mean? What a powerful line. Our truth is not God's reality. We may think it is. It's just our truth. Our truth is our truth. We may believe in conspiracies. We may believe in Santa Claus. We may believe in a ton of things. Those are our truths, and that's okay. When those truths cause suffering or pain, death, delusion, deceit, all those things that come out of cognitive dissonance when our truth does not fit God's plan or the realities of the world, the beacons then are lit. And all that can come from that deception, is bad, except through how God can make it good. Let us get through this time and let us respond to the beacons, because in the dark of Good Friday, their glimmer is probably the only light we can see, the glimmer of that promise of resurrection.
Furthermore, just as they did not think it was worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind so that they would do what ought not to be done. They become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them.
Were you there?
In Romans, just now, we heard sort of the cautionary tale of what we should not do once we emerge from the desert. We certainly know what God would have us do. We talked about the Big Ten this particular broadcast cycle. We've talked about the Sermon on the Mount this broadcast cycle. The thing that's tough about Romans 28 through 32 is it's really hard within the realm of politics or war or issue not to stand up so strongly for our truth that we break the rules, to want to win the game so much that we cheat, that we go against what God prescribes, what Jesus would tell us in the Sermon on the Mount, what God would tell us in the Big Ten, that we do those things and invent ways of doing evil, disobey our parents and have no understanding, fidelity, love, or mercy. We make up our own truths, and we try to make them real. We say that black is white and white is black, wrong is right, right is wrong, and we adamantly stick to that. Then there's nothing but mistrust because it's all competitive between who will win and who will lose. I always sort of thought that probably that fruit from that tree, the knowledge of good and evil, came from when God made the world. I think maybe there wasn't black and white till God made day and night. That whole creation story that we hear in Genesis allows us to choose. And we weren't ready for the fruit of the tree because we weren't ready to understand what was real. We wanted our truth to always win, even when it wasn't real. We wanted to be confident we would win the lottery or Santa would reward us or any of those things we wanted to believe on a bad day when we felt alone in an airport having to go through security again. We just wanted to close our eyes and be right. In some ways, then we are like God, except God is right. He just made us in his image. We cannot make wrong right by willing it so. Good Friday, all that humans did as a part of it was wrong. We made all the wrong choices. Yet it contributed to the right, the good, the real of salvation. But not through any fault of our own. We made all the wrong choices. And there's nothing that says we could not do that now. Jesus has already died and resurrected. We've had that miracle. Yet we can make all the wrong choices. We can give Caesar's stuff to our families and give God's stuff to Caesar. We can do all sorts of things that are not real because we declare them right. We can think it's not worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God. A miracle doesn't change that. That's God making stones into children of Abraham. As we deal with this dark night then, with this Black Friday, with this Great Friday, let us be humbled and awed of the real that we will commemorate soon, but also keenly aware that we can make all the wrong choices again, as we've done before. And this time, there is not a do-over on the horizon, only the anniversary of one. Let's close in prayer. God, it's dark in this space with the awareness that we could go down a path again that stays dark, even though you've given us a great light. You've brought light to the world. We don't have to see it. We can keep our eyes closed. We can shut out the light. We can work to stay in the dark because it is comfortable, because it does not challenge us, because in some ways we can allow ourselves to feel right even when we're not. Help us to take these blinders off. Help us to be able to see as you've healed so many blind folk. Let us be one. So when the Easter miracle comes, we are ready. We are ready for the bright light that we know will pierce the dark shroud of ignorance that we've had. We are ready to acknowledge God's truth. We are ready, even if it hurts, to dedicate ourselves to sharing that in the world. We are ready then to witness, to see, to testify, and even to die for God's truth. not our own truth. We ask this in your name, now and always. Amen.
Such a way as gives us breath, such a truth as ends all strife, such a life as killeth death. Come, my light, my feast, my strength, such a light as shows a feast, such a feast as meant in vain, such a strength as makes his gain. Come, my joy, my love, my heart, such a joy as none can move, such